Hello everyone, this is Sagar from Cybertech. Today we are going to discuss what is DNS and how it works. In the world of networking, computers don't go by name like humans do. They go by numbers because that's how computer and other similar devices talk and identify with each other over a network, which is by using numbers such as IP addresses. Humans, on the other hand, are accustomed to using names instead of numbers, whether it's talking directly to another person or identifying a country, place, or a thing. Humans identify with names instead of numbers. So, in order to bridge a communication gap between computers and humans and make the communication of a lot easier, networking engineers developed DNS, and DNS stands for Domain Name System. And the DNS resolves names to numbers. To be more specific, it translates domain name to IP addresses. When you enter a URL or a domain name in your web browser, for example facebook.com, your computer needs to find the IP addresses associated with that domain name in order to connect to the web server hosting that website. This process is called domain name resolution, and it is done by a system called domain name system. DNS server matches the domain name entered by user to corresponding IP addresses so that browser can connect to the correct server and fetch the web page. So DNS basically works like a phone book. When you want to find a number, you don't look up the number first. You look up the name first. Then it will give you the number. So to break this down into further details, let's examine the steps that DNS takes. So when you type in facebook.com in your web browser, and if your web browser or operating system can't find the IP addresses in its own cache memory, it will send the query to the next level, to what is called the resolver server. The resolver server is basically your ISP or internet service provider. So when the resolver receives the query, it will check its own cache memory to find IP addresses for facebook.com, and if it can't find it, it will send the query to the next level, which is the root server. The root server are the top or the root of a DNS. There are 13 set of these root servers, and they are strategically placed around the world, and they are operated by 12 different organizations, and each set of these root servers has their own unique IP addresses. So when the root server receives the query for the IP addresses for facebook.com, the root server is not going to know what the IP address is, but the root server does know where to send the resolver to help it to find the IP address. So the root server will direct the resolver to the TLD or a top level domain server for the .com domain. So the resolver will now ask the TLD server for the IP addresses for facebook.com. The top level domain server stores the addresses information for the top level domains such as .com, .net, .org, and so on. These particular TLD servers manage the .com domain, which facebook.com is a part of. So when a TLD server receives the query for the IP addresses for facebook.com, the TLD server is not going to know what the IP addresses for facebook.com. So the TLD will direct the resolver to the next and final level, which are the authoritative name server. So once again, the resolver will now ask the authoritative name server for the IP addresses for facebook.com. The authoritative name server are the responsible for knowing everything about the domain, which include the IP addresses. They are the final authority. So when the authoritative name server receives the query from the resolver, the name server will respond with the IP addresses for facebook.com, and finally the resolver will tell your computer the IP addresses for facebook.com, and then your computer can now retrieve the Facebook web page. It's important to note that once the resolver receives the IP addresses, it will store it in its cache memory. In case it receives another query for facebook.com, so it doesn't have to go through all these steps again. And this is all about DNS, and that's all for today. Make sure to like and subscribe for such technical videos. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching, and goodbye.